Hello, Cedar Village. I'm your co-host, Rabbi Drew. We, of course, have Jessica, our art specialist
Hi,
here.
everybody.
There we go. You may have viewed, and hopefully you enjoyed, our trip out to the JCC Sukkah for the artwork, and definitely highlighting, Jessica did a fantastic job highlighting the various artwork, including and especially Cedar Village's own contribution to the artwork exhibit. We're actually going to be taking a trip down memory lane, right?
Yes.
So we're going to be taking on a tour with Jessica here in this hallway in the area between the main part of the building and Oakview, and it's all 7 of the past years of Cedar Village's contributions to the artwork in the JCC Sukkah, right, Jessica?
Yes, we've been working on these pieces ever since I started here. It's been an annual tradition, and so this is the first time we have actually had them all hanging at the same time.
First time? Mm-hmm. Oh, that's an amazing treat for us. All right, so if you ever are walking by, now you will get insights from Jessica herself as to what they are and what went into them.
Yeah, it was a long process, so I'm going to go through one by one today and share the history of those with you.
Awesome. All right, here we go.
So we'll start with the very first panel that we created in 2013. I've had the pleasure of working at Cedar Village for the past 8 years. And so this was the first big community project that we worked on together, starting in the summer of 2013. And this was also the first year of the JCC Sukkah Art exhibit. We were invited to participate as a community organization, and so they gave the theme community to start off with, since that was kind of what they were starting to build community around this exhibition. So I took that theme and I brought it back to my groups, my art therapy groups here at Cedar Village, and we brainstormed. We talked about materials, we talked about what would work. We were given a 6-foot-long canvas that you can see behind us, and told we could do anything we wanted on it as long as it related to that theme and would represent something about our organization. So after brainstorming, we came up with a family tree, and we wanted to create that. Many family trees are an assemblage of the people in the family, and so then we took that word assemblage, and that's what we created, an assemblage of small fabric scraps. So we'll get a closer look in a second, but we created this over the span of about a month and a half with residents all over the building. I designed this piece so that residents from all over Cedar Village could work on it, no matter their skill or level of artistic ability. And some people took the time to cut the fabric into small scraps. Others took the time to glue it onto the kind of simple drawing on the canvas. And then others took the time to spray and glue it to seal it, because whatever we were doing to it had to be okay to hang outside for 2 weeks. And that was a major challenge in creating this artwork, to weather the elements for 2 weeks. And so once we get a closer look at this, you'll see there are thousands of tiny scraps of fabric, and they were filled in like a mosaic. We did a simple drawing of a tree, and with a city in the background. Yeah, have Rabbi Drew bring the camera in a little bit closer. We chose earth colors for the leaves and a little bit more jewel tones. We actually chose fabrics that had a little bit of a sparkle in them. You can see some glitter so that it would pick up the light and shine, since it would be hanging outside. And like I said, probably about 40 residents worked on this over the month and a half span. Some residents chose to write their names on leaves or draw symbols with glitter to leave a little piece of themselves as part of the artwork. I think that it was a great start for our tradition, and it kind of gave us an idea that when we all come together, we could create something really wonderful. I'm surprised that it has held up so well after all these years, with very few pieces coming undone. It just showed that we put a lot of time and effort into it. So following up our first piece, the second year for the JCC Sukkah Art exhibit, they gave us a little bit more specific of a theme. And they challenged us to represent what is a hero. So we had lots of brainstorming sessions around the building to come up with colors, symbols, characteristics. How do you represent a hero? And this panel was created to show that there are heroes among us, that anyone, given the right circumstances or the right relationship, could be a hero to someone. And so we created this by first rolling metallic colors all over the background. This was a great project for many residents in the building that said, I don't really know how to paint, but hand me a paintbrush and I want to help out. So we said, just do as much as you can to cover the entire canvas in metallic colors. The metallic colors were chosen by many people because they said that they were strong colors, that they were vibrant and reflective. And so they wanted to show those qualities of vibrancy and reflective and strength through that color choice. Residents also helped by posing, and their silhouettes were drawn on a plastic mirror surface and then cut out. So these are actually small portraits of many residents, some still living here at Cedar Village. And then those were glued on. And those were meant to show that people that live here are heroes, but also so that the viewer could be reflected and think about how they could also be a hero to someone. Then around the border of the piece, using a glitter glue, I invited staff and residents to write words that they thought were characteristics of a hero or someone that had been a hero to them. So there are words written around there such as fearless, supportive, gallant, selfless, caring, and so on. Even some in other languages, so that it would speak to all. Now, this work was actually chosen as a standout at the exhibit. In 2014, when Music Hall reopened, they invited several of the participants from the exhibition to have their work hung in the entryway there. Ours was one of them, so it actually graced Music Hall for several weeks for the reopening. It was quite an honor to be included in that. Just looking at it, I'm remembering that one person suggested the crown, the heart for strength, and the wings that our heroes can take flight and look over us. All right, I hope you enjoy this piece. The theme for the JCC Sukkah Art exhibit was food for the body, food for the soul. This gave us lots of ideas because I don't know many people here at Cedar Village that don't like to think about food. So I designed this piece to look like a three-dimensional setting, as if you might be standing outside a home and looking into a Bubby's kitchen, which is what many of our residents would have. The framework around the image consists of hundreds of recipes donated by residents and family members, as well as staff. Every inch of this artwork was worked on by residents, from gluing the scraps of paper and the printed recipes down, to painting large scraps of material that were then cut up and transformed into things like the tiled floor. The table was made out of scraps of painted paper. There is actually, if you look in the details up above, I'm not tall enough to reach that, we actually used copper sheeting to create the copper pots hanging above the kitchen. We used yarn for the rug, and several residents painted plants that were then cut out and put into a three-dimensional window box. I had the pleasure of having an assistant on this project, a young woman interning with me that summer named Lily, who was very skilled at drawing and helped to develop this realistic kitchen and make it come to life. It was a lot of fun to see how the different materials would come together and work together. And then one resident chose a poem or a quote that's listed right here that they felt summed it all up. It says, "It takes a grandmother to show how a little wisdom, a lot of patience, and a good batch of home cooking can solve almost any problem. Words to live by right there. So as you're walking by, if you stop and take a look, you might actually find a really delicious recipe, like for challah or kosher dill pickles along your way. This was definitely a favorite to create. It was a lot of fun, and it just brought in so many different ideas and so many different people from around and outside Cedar Village. The panel for 2016 proved to be a bit of a challenge, both because of the theme and the technique that we chose to use. The JCC gave us the theme home. For a lot of our residents at Cedar Village, home is a bit of an emotional topic. They have left their homes and moved in here. It's sometimes a struggle to make this place feel like home. And so when I introduced this topic, many people said, I have no idea how to represent that. So we talked about their feelings, for starters, related to this, and we talked about the homes that they once had and how they enjoyed the inside and the outside of the home and how they used their home to present who they were to other people. And through those discussions, we came up with the idea that every home, no matter where you come from, what size the home is, every home has a door. And all of our homes here at Cedar Village, apartments, rooms of all sizes, they all have a door. And that's your way of showing who you are to the outside world. So I asked residents and staff to each represent a door that would tell something about them. They could draw it, they could color it, they could paint it, it could be in any different form, as long as it was a certain size. And then we took each of those doors and using a photo transfer process that I had never tried out before, which was one reason that I mentioned it was a bit of a challenge, I transferred each of those images, a lot like a t-shirt would be printed, onto the canvas. Well, it worked out really well for a lot of the doors, and then some of the doors that had a lot more detail did not come out quite as well as I had anticipated. So I had about 3 or 4 residents that were working with me on this project that were very good at detail. And we had photographed each and every one of the doors prior to transferring them, just in case something happened in the process. So from those photographs, we sat down over a couple of weeks' time and used hand painting to fill in any of those missing details. So as you look close, you can see some of them have a little bit of a more of a rough texture, but a lot of the details came through loud and clear. Each and every door is individual and different, much like the residents here at Cedar Village. Some approached it through painting, some approached it through drawing. You can actually see people through the windows here of the door looking out. We even have doors that open to show what was not only on the outside of the home, but inside. For instance, this person said inside the home, she always had music and art, and that's what made her home special. This person included family pictures inside the home and said if she didn't have a baby running around the house, it just didn't feel right. So up here in the center, which I'm a little too short to reach, but I'm going to try to pop it open, there's a quote that says, "From many houses we come together to make this place a home," which is what we created through all of these doors coming together in one door frame, even with a vintage handle there to represent the door to Cedar Village. This was a lot of fun to create, seeing how each person approached the project so differently, but with so much enthusiasm. There were tons of personal stories that came out through this process, and through groups, people got to know each other better through this creation. So this is actually scraps. In 2016, we remodeled the front lobby, and there was a mural that we helped work together and design. This is actually scraps of the same material that is used in our lobby, and it actually forms a frame around the panel. So as you walk by, make sure you take a look. There's so much to see in this piece. All right. We even have a fire door up there. The activities director was an retired fireman. And he didn't know how to paint it, so he's like, I need a fire door. Okay. One thing I have learned from doing so many community projects and artworks in general at Cedar Village is that everybody loves color. Color is very important in art, and it's one of the basic elements of art. So we decided to use that for this theme, which was Beyond Beauty, was the theme given to us for this exhibit. When I asked residents to define beauty, or what makes something beautiful, many shared ideas, symbols, and colors. The colors seem to be the most important part. Like a kaleidoscope, everyone sees the world differently, and sometimes that changes even moment to moment. So we put that idea together, and that everyone has their own personal perception of beauty. The artwork was intended to culminate all of our views of beauty into a rainbow, which I'm pretty sure everyone would say is beautiful. So if you look closely at this, kind of inside the colors, which you see overall is a color wheel, and when you look more closely, there are words that people said defined something that could be even more than just beauty. Joy, hope, awe, wonder, peace, intellect, equality, family, spirituality, love, freedom, and faith. Those were all concepts that came up through this process, as well as some symbols like a peace sign, mountains, plants growing, a home, a book, hearts, clouds, Star of David. They've really brought all of these symbols together that represent all of the kind of internal concepts we have behind what we find beautiful in this world, and tied them all together. So for this panel, I definitely chose a simpler technique. I'll tell you that in 2016, surprisingly, right when this was made, I had a newborn at home. I'm not really sure how I spent so much time working on this piece with that in mind, but then once he became one, he required a little bit more of my time, and I didn't have the time to put in as much detail. So I had to redesign the project and think of something where the residents here could work on it more independently sometimes, and also something that wouldn't require as much detail. So we tried to come up with broad fields of color and symbols instead. And I like what Rabbi Drew said just a moment ago to me, that it's visually stunning and pleasing because we went with a simple design on it. So by 2018, the art crowd at Cedar Village had grown, and I had so many people interested in working on this project. We put lots of effort into the theme for this year, which was looking at the past, reaching for the future. So when I asked people to relate to that theme, I was given images like a mirror, when you're reflecting on yourself, growth, and the tree of life. Those ideas not only came up from individuals, but I kept hearing them over and over as I talked to people about this piece. Those all came together to create the tree of life, which is what we called this piece. And it happens to be a favorite of mine because it came together really effortlessly in the concept, and it was really fun to see people working together and collaborating in groups on this project. We had over 40 residents work on this piece. Many times I would have 10 or 12 residents around a table at the same time working, which was lots of fun to see. And it really served as a reflection on where we are now, which was the way that they designed the top half of the piece, and where we have all come from, which was the bottom part of the piece, as if it were reflecting. As time is relative and we find ourselves sometimes immersed in memory and then pulling back to the present, we represented the past, the present, and the future all in one image. It is both a sunrise and simultaneously a sunset. We also incorporated symbols that persist through time, giving us meaning to hold on to when other things are ever changing. Those symbols you can see are actually in the tree. If you look closely, and they were symbols of faith that we have that have been passed down for generations. In the center, it says in gold, it's a little hard to see because it is reflective, it is a tree of life for those who hold fast to it, and all its supporters are happy. So in the process of this, we not only filled in the design after I had sketched the image, but I was able to teach people a lot of technique, which was fun, about how to create blended colors, how to differentiate a sunrise from a sunset due to color choice, how to get texture in the bark of the trees. So we really learned a lot through this process, and not only about the art, but about each other in creating it. Creative expression is part of daily life for many at Cedar Village. In 2019, we were given the art of conversation as the theme from the JCC. Members of the community began discussing and visualizing associations with this phrase. And initially, all they came up with were greetings. And they said, that's how you carry on a conversation. You greet somebody, and it just happens naturally after that. But we couldn't come up with any real strong visuals to represent it. So after we delved a little bit deeper, the artists that worked on this panel decided they wanted to make a statement. They wanted to invite people from the community to Cedar Village to have a conversation. So I asked, where would that happen? What would it look like? What would you talk about? And that's how this was created. So initially everybody said, well, you meet them in the front lobby. So I said, all right, then that's what we have. We will represent the front lobby. So we created a welcoming environment, 2 chairs, a table, a nice warm fire, a place to sit and have a conversation. Residents said, well, that conversation might open up many different ways. We have lots of people from lots of different backgrounds here. And so they used that idea by adding greetings that hung above the fireplace, waiting to be selected to open a conversation, or maybe lingering from conversations that have already happened there in the past. The image of the fireplace was meant to be warm and welcoming. And then as a conversation starter, they chose to include a copy of the children's book that they had just finished and published here at Cedar Village. So for many of you that know, or even those of you that don't know, that last year we celebrated the publication of our first and only children's book that was both written and illustrated completely by residents and staff at Cedar Village. The book was called Follow Me Beyond the Tree, and it was meant to be the story of 2 children who happened, sorry about that noise, who happened to find their way to the doors of Cedar Village, come inside, and discover what is this place all about through conversations with our residents. And so they felt that that was an appropriate conversation starter for this piece. The book is actually 3-dimensional and laminated because it had to be hanging outside for several weeks. And it was put on using Velcro so that viewers could come by, pull it off, and actually thumb through the book and take a look. So the entire book is there for you to read if you come by and want to take a look. And if you have trouble getting it back on, you can actually just leave it here and we can add it on later. This was not an easy piece to create though, because conversations can sometimes be hard. Sometimes we don't know what to talk about, and we certainly don't always know how to represent it visually. But I feel like together, as a group here at Cedar Village, we were able to come up with something that was really beautiful and representative of an important part of where we are here together. So this actually culminates the panels from 2013 to 2019. In a previous video shot by Rabbi and I, we focused on the panels that were represented in the Sukkah this year. And we can give you a little glimpse of the final one before we wrap up. So I didn't want to leave out this year's piece. We had people work on this that are here and hopefully remember working on it. If not, coming by and taking a walk down the hallway might jog your memory. This piece and the theme was called Together Apart. And boy, that's still fresh on our minds right now. We are all still together apart. This year's theme led to an idea of a giant Zoom call or a quilt that represents how we all can come together while staying in our own separate spaces, and what we've been doing to express ourselves and to keep sane during this difficult time. So each of these squares was painted by a resident or painted by me after they described in detail what they have done to bring them joy. Sorry about that. Joy, peace, and connection during this hard time. So we had all kinds of things included, from drinking iced coffee to playing with cats to doing virtual Tai Chi. And each square tells a story about someone's experience over these last few months. We also have glimpses of how we have tried to bring joy and hope around the building with window murals, a Heroes Work Here sign that was created for out in front of our building, and actually, when we were able to get back into the dining room, how it might have looked when we were eating separated by the long table. So have a chance to swing by here and check out this piece. I don't want to spend too much time on it because this video was really representing the history of these projects, but I didn't want to leave out our most recent creation.
All right, Jessica, this was really fantastic to take a walk down memory lane, all of the last 8 years of contributions from Cedar Village to the artwork and the JCC Sukkah. So thank you for showing us what and talking about what went into all the pieces of artwork.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing in this and helping me film it. This was actually an idea that came up a while ago, but we were just waiting to have the right time and space for it. So I think it's really nice to see it all together. It's a nice way, we were walking down the hall, you can take a moment to look at the art. If you ever want to talk to me about any of the pieces or ask questions about them, please reach out. I'd love to have a conversation with you.
All right, well, thank you so much, Jessica.
All right, thanks.